Welcome back to another frigid, below frigid Saturday morning here in Detroit, Michigan. We all know that's not how it's getting down in Mobile right now. I see the t-shirts, I see the shorts. So y'all, it's a little different down there in Mobile right now. But today we are joined by a very special guest. Grateful to have you here, Mr. Jeff Barnes. Give our listeners a rundown of exactly who you are.
I'm Jeff Barnes. I'm with Team NBS Draft Central, Team NBS Media. I'm the director of NFL scouting there, and title sounds a little misleading. Basically, I drive the NFL content, the draft content for Team NBS Media. I've been there for 6 years. Primarily, I started with Cover Two Draft, which was our own draft scouting service and website. Which is no longer a website anymore because I've become such a big part of Team NBS Media. I also Hall of Fame coach. Um, I still coach at the high school level as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Nice. Thanks, Jeff,
So,
for coming on.
yeah, like I said, I want to thank you once again for joining us on this cool Saturday morning. So, want to get straight into it. Senior Bowl. What are your thoughts on the game itself overall? Because I've heard a lot of people say over the past few years, probably 10 years, that the game is like a microcosm of how important it is in comparison to actually the full week of practice. That coaches get, scouts get, GMs get to talk with some of these players, put them in different positions. It's great that the teams kind of switch and both coaching staffs are allowed to coach up these players. What are your thoughts on the Senior Bowl and how important it seems to have become?
I'm one of those people that believes in the all-star process because it's your first chance to really see these guys in a football environment taking pro coaching, getting things that they're going to get at the next level. So when you're talking about offensive players, the difference between them going to the line of scrimmage, clapping, looking at the sideline and seeing a play call and then running it, the difference between them actually going into the huddle and calling out an actual 7 to 8 term play call that they normally don't do at the college level. So they start to see all of those things that we want to see from them at the NFL level. They start to get a little taste of that. You watch these guys absorb it over a couple of days. The guys that absorb it quickly are the guys that you want because those are the guys that are going to take that 700-page playbook, diagnose it, understand it, and apply it, as opposed to the guys who go out there and struggle through a couple of days. Those are the guys that are going to struggle with your playbook, and it's going to take them a lot longer to contribute. So I think it's one of those things you get to see some of the things you don't get to see at the college level, especially from the offensive linemen, where you running spread, running a lot of bubble, a lot of all these things where they're quick setting and rushing down the field. You don't get to see their pass sets enough, so you don't get to fully evaluate that stuff. Here in a pro setting, you get to see them evaluate a lot more as they're doing the one-on-ones. They're in a full pass pro mode most of the game, very little of the screen game. So a lot more evaluation goes into technique and all the things that you want to see, not just the traits in these games, which is what you love about it.
The one-on-ones, the competition. We talked about, well, me and this man right here have talked about um, like wide receivers. People ask me the question all the time about why are the wide receivers just so athletic, so dynamic today more than it seems like they've ever been. I'm like, these dudes have been playing a whole lot of 7-on-7, growing up. Like these guys coming to the league as man beaters. You can't play man coverage against these dudes today. That's pretty much what it is. And I think it's kind of the same for like defensive ends, offensive tackles, like guards. So it's a whole lot more one-on-one going on out there now, a whole lot more one-on-one training. Jonathan, you got any questions about the Senior Bowl itself?
Yeah, first of all, Jeff, thanks for being on, Jeff. Man, you just ooze out with your knowledge, man. You can tell, what I'm saying, you're a guy who studies and lives football. But one question is for me, I mean, okay, because like sometimes it seems like the game itself, a player doesn't get enough looks to really make an evaluation. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect example. Like I think where the game made, like Spencer Rattler last year, I remember he was kind of a like not on everybody's like radar list. Well, people knew who he was, but they were saying, "Well, is he an NFL prospect?" And I think this game last year, the week, the game, and then he wound up getting drafted by the Saints. But what I'm saying is, I think this game does matter. I think it does mean, you know what I'm saying? In the whole process, like you said, Jeff, I think at the beginning, you want to see how these guys handle the off the field, the media, different coaches from all around the country, different scouts talking to teams and stuff like that. So I think it is part of the process. My question is, or just maybe I pick your brain a little bit. This year, I think Dylan Gabriel is interesting because I think that he had a sour taste in his mouth by getting beat by Ohio State. You know what I'm saying? And it's sort of like I like Dylan Gabriel. I know he could be a little bit undersized. He may be the forgotten man in a quarterback pick litter this year because he did lose in such a bad fashion. You know what I'm saying? I think some of those guys get overlooked because the way the season ended. So I think that Dylan Gabriel, this is a game that could help his stock if he has a big game. You would think he would log in a lot of playing time today. So what's your thoughts on Dylan Gabriel, if you have any?
I do. He's one of those guys. A lot of people are discounting him because of the height, because of different things. I like Dylan Gabriel, and the reason why is, the fortunate thing is I'm in Tampa, so I'm close to Central Florida. I get to see their games a lot. I've been going there since Dylan Gabriel was there. Dylan Gabriel, at Central Florida, had a decent start. Had a little bit of a rough patch with the last coach that was there, transferred on, moved on to Oklahoma. Goes to a totally different system at Oklahoma, succeeds. Goes to a totally different system at Oregon, succeeds. So we saw growth, which is what you want to see out of a prospect over the years. Does he have shortcomings? Yes. But unlike Rattler, you saw consistent growth out of Gabriel. So if you like Rattler, you should really like Gabriel because he may not have the same tools, but you saw the growth of a player in different systems and continued growth. With Rattler, you saw stagnation. He started out a little hot at Oklahoma when he was given that spot duty, got the full-time job, lost it to Caleb Williams, was never the same player. The last year at South Carolina had his ups and downs, had some great moments, had some really ugly moments, but it was never consistent growth. You've seen that out of Dylan Gabriel. You've seen, we know what the traits are. We know what the shortcomings are. The NFL now is built better for shorter quarterbacks than we've seen in the past. So there are teams that are going to see Dylan Gabriel, have a plan for him, know how to manage their offense for him. Is he going to be the most elusive guy in the pocket? No, but he has enough to move around and make throws off platform. So I think what you see with Dylan Gabriel is what you get. He's not going to be a top 10 quarterback, but he's a guy that you can see going around day 2, maybe even early day 3 if he falls that far. But he's a guy that's going to contribute to a quarterback room and potentially long-term be a quality starter somewhere.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe's been kind of up and down. That's kind of been the story of his career. If you want to be honest about it, from a tool standpoint, from a physical stature standpoint, body type, he's probably the best quarterback in this class. If you're talking about arm power, athleticism, mobility, having a better, at least in my estimation, a better body structure. He has more of an NFL body, I think, than Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. But the inconsistencies, accuracy wise, and I told someone the other day that the struggles that Anthony Richardson has had in the NFL have done Jalen Milroe a complete disservice because we understand how the league is. They'll try with you one time. If it doesn't work, everybody's scared off of you now. Has Jalen Milroe interviewed pretty well? Are there teams out there that still view him as a guy that's worth maybe taking a first? Or even I've heard people who say they don't believe he's a first or a second. They just think he's that far away as a prospect. But are there teams out there that really view him as a guy that they would take in the first right now?
I don't think they have him high enough on their board to be a first-round pick. However, he's a guy that they can consider taking a little bit later. He's showing you that he's still more of a project than he is a finished product. So when you get that kind of label, you're not a first-round guy for the most part. Very, very rarely do they take a guy unless they're really, really high on the upside on him. They're going to say, yes, we'll develop you. We got to get you now before somebody takes you later. He's not that guy. But when you look at Jalen Milroe, there's still a lot of potential for growth. He is still a mostly blank canvas. There's only so much done as far as the work with him. So you look at Jalen Milroe, what he was asked to do at Alabama before this year, what he was asked to do this year. There's inconsistency. There's inconsistency in the throwing platform. We've seen that during this week. However, you can't deny the arm talent. You can't deny the fact that he has the athletic ability, and he's one of those guys that's durable enough to take the pounding and still keep going for 4 quarters, with some of these quarterbacks you're worried about. So I think when you look at Jalen Milroe, he's a guy that there's a team that has a plan for him. They'll take him when they need to take him. They're not going to rush to take him unless they feel he's not going to be there the next time they go pick. And he's going to be a guy that they're going to say, okay, well, we got a guy ready to start right now. You're a guy that's for the future. I think with the difference between him and Richardson, they saw more upside. They've seen a lot more from. They knew the struggles of the program at Florida when Richardson was there.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think when you look at a comparable prospect to him would have been the guy that's there now, Lagway. Lagway's a guy coming up with a lot of upside, and people like him, but they're seeing the challenges of the program right now. So with Richardson, the biggest challenge for Richardson was between the ears, and we saw that this year. You know, we got a little too cocky, too big for his britches. They had to sit him down and put him back there for a minute before he came back, and he played rather well. Is he the most consistent thrower of football? No. Now there was Josh Allen when he first came into the league. Look at him now. So accuracy, unlike what you hear from certain quarterbacks like Troy Aikman, who say, oh, you have it, you don't. We're proving right now accuracy can change. Lamar Jackson was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league this year, and he wasn't the most accurate when he got here. Okay, so there are a lot of quarterbacks who, listen, sometimes it's a functionality thing. Sometimes it's a throwing thing where they have to rechange their throwing motion to become a little more accurate. Sometimes they're just used to throwing off platform that they don't throw with a good base. Those things are fixable. If it's a guy who does everything right technically and can't throw on time, can't throw accurately, can't lead receivers away from coverage, that's a guy you have to worry about as far as accuracy at the next level. You're not seeing that with Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe just has to refine. One, his throwing motion is a little too wide. He has to compact it a little. Two, get used to driving with his hips, getting the power from the legs into the throw. And three, just anticipation. He's one of those see it before he throws at quarterbacks. If he learns to throw with anticipation, understanding where guys are going to be, where they're going to open up, the coverage he's seeing, that'll also help his accuracy.
How much of it is a muscle base? Because he has an issue that I noticed. Jalen Milroe, Cam Newton, Will Levis, even though Will Levis has bigger issues between the ears. But it seems to me like those yoked up guys, extremely muscular in the upper body, they have those football sailing on them issues. They don't have the flexibility pretty much in the upper part of their bodies for the most part. And it kind of throws off the quick twitch that you kind of need to have. That's one thing I did say about Richardson. I felt that Richardson needed to slim down too much. They talked about him being rumors about him being 270. That's kind of outrageous. You know, whether it's muscle or not. Like, I don't need my quarterback to be 270 pounds worth of muscle. I was a guy coming out with him. I kind of felt that it was kind of hit or miss, boom or bust. There were rumors about our Detroit Lions, and there's always rumors about everybody liking everybody coming out. But there were rumors about Brad Holmes being interested in him. I said he had the potential to be the LeBron James in the NFL. We've never seen anybody like Anthony Richardson from a physical standpoint to be 260 and do all these things that have nothing to do with football. I can do backwards flips, no hands, and I can do reverse dunks. But to me, the accuracy issues are frightening. He had about 5 games this past season where he would in the first half like 5 for 16, 5 for 18, 4 for 19. Like those are video game level bad completion percentages. So is that something that he can get better at? Because we noticed when he got benched, he came back the very next week against the Jets. He balled out against the Jets. That was the best we ever seen him play. But as a Lions fan watching him nationally this season, it's like, okay, like this dude just throws everything hot. Everything is hot with him, and everything is inaccurate. It's like if he's supposed to lead guys, The ball is 85 miles per hour back here. Oh, it's
Hmm.
up here. There's no he's like a fastball pitcher in baseball and that he's a closer. Like that's all he is. And it's like, okay, well,
Yeah,
is it him? Is it Florida? Did he develop bad habits at Florida?
I
Is
think
it his
that's it.
work ethic?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it the Colts? What's going on with them? So it's I think Richardson's a guy you root for because
hmm
everything you hear about him that he's a great kid. But some guys, that the accuracy just doesn't come for some guys, I think.
yeah. And we saw it with Vince Young. Remember, Vince Young was that kind of way. He'd have moments where he could throw the ball very well, but then he'd have those a lot of periods of inaccuracy. It's a consistency thing. For him, it starts with he's like a lot of the guys we're talking about, Jalen Milroe and some of these guys. They're arm throwers, right? The guys that rely on their arm, the fit balls in there. Um, Arm throwers can be very inaccurate because what happens is they don't use the proper mechanics. They're not driving with their hips into the throw. It's all torque from the arm. Those are the most inaccurate guys, just like those are the most inaccurate pitchers. Those are the guys that are constantly throwing all over the place, right? So it's quarterback mechanics of something that if you're not doing it right, you have to be a very special player. Pat Mahomes is that special player. He doesn't have to use perfect mechanics to still be accurate. Not everybody is that guy. So when you look at Anthony Richardson, yes, he has the build, he has all of that, but he's a guy that needs to refine his mechanics to become a better passer of the football. And it's because plain and simple, he can see guys open and he'll try and gun it in there. Problem is, you have underneath coverage, you have over the top coverage, and if you're trying to gun a ball in there, it's not going to be accurate because what's going to happen is 10-1, you're not going to get it through that underneath defender, and even if you do, it's getting tipped and bounced around, or you're trying to throw it around that underneath defender, and it's not on line with your receiver. So there are so many things that go into it when you're talking about coverage and stuff that you have to understand. Even though I can throw the ball a million miles, I have to throw it with a little bit of arc to get it over coverage underneath and still hit a guy in the numbers, which is a very tough thing to do, to throw with a little bit of touch. A lot of guys are just all arm because they can't throw accurately with touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throw it sails behind, it sails over. So they always wind up over-arming throws. He's one of those guys.
Yep.
And that's what you're seeing with Milroe as well. Milroe doesn't throw with touch either. So it's one of those things that you can learn to do it. Are you going to be the best at it? Probably not. Right. So there are certain guys that get better at it and understand how the proper mix of power and touch. He's got to find that perfect mix. Some guys never get it done.
Yeah. I just want to allude to. I just think it's cliche, but I obviously people don't want to hear this. Franchise fans don't want to hear it. It's patience, man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you rarely get a guy who checks all the boxes and can win. Okay, he got to win too. You know what I'm saying? So if you put the guy in there, Andrew Luck was probably the last guy I can remember who kind of absorbed like the pressure and won right out the gate. You know what I'm saying? Obviously his career was cut short. You know what I'm saying? But
He cut it short himself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he did that himself. But I do think, like Jeff alluded to, Walt, you alluded to, I think that's why the Senior Bowl, the beginning of the process, is so crucial, man. I do believe that. I do believe if you're interviewing one of these kids and you trust me, you'll know within 15 minutes if this kid's got it between the ears. You know what I'm saying? And then you're going to be able to work with. Then you can take that information to your general manager or to your organization and say, hey, I talked to this kid, man, and he's got it. You know what I'm saying? As far as mentally, he can handle the pressure, stuff like that. And I think sometimes we get enamored with the physical traits. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, this guy can throw the tongue. Because like you said, I mean, he reminded Anthony Richardson, I'm speaking of, he reminded me of a young Dante Culpepper to me. You know what I'm saying? Coming out, big guy, throw the ball a ton, you know what I'm saying? And Culpepper, he was kind of like an unknown, but he kind of wasn't in the football scouting realm. But to the NFL mainstream media, he was kind of an unknown. Everybody just knew he could throw the ball a ton, right? So to get with the right coaching staff, to get with the right team in the situation. 'Cause let's be honest, man, a lot of these kids ain't ready to play, man, right off the bat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think that's part of it. I think, Jordan Love was in a good situation. I'm just using him because he didn't start right away. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes
Mhm.
Yeah,
you got
Pat
like
was in a
Kyle,
great situation.
yeah, you pick Kyler Murray. Remember Arizona picked Kyler Murray, and from day one he had to start. Well, maybe I'm not saying, and I think Kyler Murray's figured it out now. I think he's got the right tools and the right experience now. He's had enough reps, seen a lot of defenses. Where now I think we'll see a better version of him coming up here. The next couple years. So I think a lot of times, these kids get the weight of their worlds placed on them. And I don't think that's fair, man, sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, if you got a Pat Mahomes, man, you got one like Jaden Daniels, you got one. You know what I'm saying? But that's few and far between, man. You know what I'm saying? In the grand scheme of things. So, yeah, and I'm glad Walt brought him up because he was another guy, man, built like RoboCop. I like Jalen Milroe, I do.
Yeah.
But, man, I don't know how patient people are going to be with him. You imagine if he went to, let's just say he went to the Giants. They'll eat that kid up, man. You know what I'm saying? If he don't
Yes.
win
Yes.
or he can't throw the ball to Malik Neighbors and on a consistent basis, man, they tear him up.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. I don't
very,
know. I think Pat was as bad of a reputation as people gave Patrick Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech.
yeah,
Oh, he's reckless. He's this, he's that. He's everything. He's completely technically unrefined. You're gonna have to completely rebuild him. He still didn't turn the ball over a ton at Texas Tech. Now, if you look at the situation he went to with Andy Reid, it was perfect for him.
yeah,
Perfect. We may not be saying that if Cleveland took him that year in the top 5.
yeah, that's true.
He may have went to Cleveland and developed a whole bunch of bad habits. Even though he would have had what Joe Thomas was retired by then. Matter of
Yeah,
fact, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
where you go matters the absolute most. Now, some of these kids we find out they can't play. I was a guy that was never really high on Zach Wilson. I thought Zach Wilson just came from out of nowhere. People got enamored with the arm. He was a former baseball player. He could do this, he could do that. When you heard about some of the stuff as far as him personality wise in the locker room at BYU and teammates not liking him, this and that stuff matters. Especially when you're a rookie coming into the league and you're asked to lead a locker room full of grown men.
Mhm.
That type of stuff matters. And did Zach potentially get a raw deal with the Jets? Was he the worst type of quarterback to go to that type of organization? That could be what happened as well. But if we look at that class, that was supposed to be historic, remember? And
Yeah.
I didn't like anybody in that class, to be honest. I mean, I like
Yeah.
Justin Fields, but I always felt watching Trevor in college, it was just, to me, I never got what everybody saw. I remember the age, the commercial, not the commercial, but the interview he did on ESPN when he was 14. It's like that's what everybody kept going back to was, well, he has to be great because we've been told you've been great since you were 14 years old. But when you watch him throw at Clemson, it was like the ball never consistently left his hand the same. He struggled to layer the football. He went through these mind-boggling stretches during games where the accuracy would come and go. It's like watching him, you don't get leader from him as far as on the field with his teammates. I just always felt that Trevor was a guy that was blessed with some physical tools, but maybe mentally he's not the guy that you expect him to be. And we think that when we see these super talented quarterbacks, we automatically attach the word leader to him. Most of the time, the most talented player on the team isn't the guy blessed with the most leadership skills. It's the other guys. It's the guards who are the captains on the team. It's the tackles. It's the defensive tackles. It's the safeties for the most part. But I just
yeah,
think that the quarterback position, man, you gotta kind of hit a home run on multiple levels. You look at the Houston Texans. They drafted the right quarterback. They hired the right head coach. They got the right people in there to make the decisions that year. You look at the Detroit Lions. We traded away Matthew Stafford. We got the GM right. We got the head coach right. And we started hitting home runs with these players immediately. We got an all-pro and a Pro Bowler in the third round in back-to-back years in Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. But that's the NFL's fault. Brian Branch had no business falling as far as he fell. All because of a 4.5, not a 4.6. He's a safety, and you're mad because he ran a 4.5.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's funny, we were just talking about this on our show Draft Central a couple of weeks ago. When you want the best, especially out of the quarterback position, you have to have a plan, right? If you're going to draft a guy and not have a real plan, you're kind of mixing things together, then they're going to struggle. We're talking about our first episode, the quarterback position. The top 5 quarterbacks on my board last year all started games and won for their team this year. Okay. Of course, we know about Caleb Williams. We know about Jalen Daniels. Bo Nix was number 5 on my board. Started the whole season, took his team to the playoffs.
He was great. I love Bo Nix.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading the names from over here. But nevertheless, in Atlanta, young man came in off the bench. Michael Penix came in, started games, almost took them to the playoffs, right? When Kirk Cousins was starting to falter down the stretch, right? So for the top 5 all started games and won for their teams. So if you're looking at it in the success of the overall team, the teams that had long-term plans for these quarterbacks, developmental and long-term plans with the organization, they found ways to make things work for them. Caleb Williams didn't get that success because he came into a situation that was unstable. He came in as a coach on this last year, right? If you're going to have a lame duck head coach, you don't bring in a rookie quarterback. That's rule number 1. So he was set up to fail once he got there. Okay, regardless who the coordinator was, if things didn't go well, as we saw they weren't going well, they started off great and had some rough patches, and all of a sudden things went wrong and the coach was gone. Now you're going down the end of the season with no head coach, no direction as a team, right? That's a bad situation. You're right. So when Jaden Daniels, a totally different situation, right? They came in, they knew what they wanted to do. They brought in a lot of free agent help. They did everything they could to make it easier on this young man. He played well. The team went far. All right. So when you have a plan for your quarterback that you're bringing in, and long-term plans, not just, okay, we're going to get through this year, we're going to throw a bunch of things together, you're going to have more success. So even if you don't have the success, you're going to see the improvement long-term over it. Okay? That's what the difference in these quarterbacks is. Now, when you talk about Zach Wilson, there were red flags there. People ignored him. Mm-hmm. Okay? I know some of the national guys that ignored it, and they said it on air. Oh, lose me with he couldn't get ready for Coastal Carolina in 2 days. Well, in the NFL, guess what? You play on a Sunday night, you got to turn around and play on a Thursday morning. You only get 2 days to prepare. That's a red flag if you can't prepare for a team in 2 days, especially a program that's lower than yours. Coastal Carolina and BYU are not on the same level. If he couldn't go out there and score against Coastal Carolina more than 12 points, he wasn't going to turn around in the NFL and have instant success. That was a red flag that people ignored. Now, the other red flag was, okay, he goes to Denver. Here comes Bo Nix. You have a couple of years of experience. You're supposed to have all this talent. Bo Nix comes in and unseats you. Okay, so it shows that he was never the prospect that he was supposed to be. He was a good young quarterback. He could possibly still turn into a decent starter. Not going to be a great long-term starter, but he could certainly turn into a decent starter in the NFL, given a chance to develop. But once again, a bad situation. Now he's in a better situation, but with a bad situation for him because there's a better quarterback there that he's not going to unseat in Bo Nix. So for him, it's going to be a develop, learn, try and stick somewhere, and maybe I get a Taylor Heineke experience where I can come in and unseat somebody who's not playing well and take the job from him. Sam Darnold. People talked about that one. A lot of red flags there coming in that people ignored. The 21 turnovers his last year at USC. Followed him to the NFL. He turned the ball over a lot with the Jets, turned the ball over in Carolina. Okay. This was the first year he didn't suffer a lot of turnovers. We talked about it earlier. Why? They're playing ahead. They didn't have to rely on his arm. Those other teams did. Okay. Great running game, good defense. He's able to go out there and consistently win this year. But when you got to playoff time, your weaknesses become a lot more glaring. It showed in the playoffs that he is not going to be able to carry a team with his arm. And that's what happened to them in the playoffs. So This is where it comes down to. You got to trust your evaluation, trust what you're seeing from a player. If you're ignoring red flags, they always pop up in the NFL. There is no way to avoid that.
Yeah, I want to switch gears a little bit on some a small school player because I seen one of our listeners, Brent. Good. Thank y'all for listening. By the way, Brent, Jo,
Vincent.
yeah, Ben, yeah, Carson Vincent, Jeff from Alabama A&M. And
Yes.
when our listener brought him up, I didn't know nothing about Carson Vincent, so I had to kind of look him up. Interesting prospect. I mean, do you have any insight on him, Jeff?
Yeah.
Because go ahead, Jeff.
The good thing is, having Cookman and those schools around, I get to see a lot of these guys. So I got to see him at Alabama State. He has the height, length, and all that stuff that you love to see out of a tackle. You got to see more of him this week, right? Yes, he dominated at the HBCU level, but you really got to see him this week go out there against guys that are going to test his talent ability, and he showed up big, okay? Problem with what you're seeing in a lot of these offenses, they do a lot of running, so you get to see the run blocking, yes, but pass sets, once again, if you're throwing a lot of screens, we're not seeing you fully kick, slide out, and protect the edge. You didn't see that a lot from him, but when he did it well at the college level. You got to see it this week. He went out there, excellent hand placement, does a great job at kick sliding and meeting people at the corner. Good job of redirecting when they try to go back inside on him. So he does a lot of things right. A lot more mobile than what we saw when Titus Howard came out. Titus Howard has a little bit of that change of direction issue because he was a bigger guy as far as girth. But overall, he's a nice long prospect, nice long arms, knows how to use them, something that you really like to hear. And he plays with good bend. So, a lot of tall guys have that issue. He doesn't have that issue. When you look at the height weight on him, see if I can find his numbers. Yes. So he's virtually 6'7", 6'6", 6067, 314, 10 and 1/8 inch hands, 35 and 1/8 inch arms. So he fits all of the NFL benchmarks when it comes to height, weight, length. Okay, and the wingspan, ridiculous. So he's a wingspan of 6'11 and 3/4. So he has all of that, and then some. So when you talk about it, he has the long arms, he has the length, he has all of that, everything that you want out of NFL tackle. But you're seeing the change of direction, you're seeing the kick slide, and he's still raw. He's not finished yet. Okay, so he has the ability to turn into a very, very good player, potentially a possible Pro Bowler in the future. So there's a guy that you're talking about. His value definitely went up this week because now you get the chance to see him in a pro-style offense that highlights all the things he's going to have to do at the next level, not the chasing down at the second level on screens and stuff that a lot of these schools use at the college level because they don't have a refined quarterback, because they're trying to create things on the outside because it's hard to get outside on speed defenses. So that's why these games are so important. It really highlighted the things he needed to boost his draft stock.
Definitely. I want to go over to another very tall tackle we discussed on our show a couple of days ago. That's Chase Lunt of UConn. Guy I think has some pretty impressive film when it comes to tackles. Even though UConn isn't a small school, it's a basketball school. But even though UConn isn't a small school, it's still a small school in comparison to the Big Ten, the SEC or whatnot. So I'm really big on what do you do against the big time schools when you do play them. And I think Chase Lunt, if you go back to 2023, he had some really good film against Tennessee. I think they threw about 5 different edge rushers at him that game, and he washed everybody. And if you go to the Michigan game this season, which, Michigan had their issues that we're not going to speak about, but he had some really good film against Michigan as well. I've heard some words around the league that he could potentially, this is about a couple months ago, he could potentially be a guy that snuck his way into the back end of the first round, early second. How high are the league officials really right now on Chase Lunt?
I haven't heard as much about him just yet. I think as we get closer to the combine, that'll happen. We really get to see him work. So far, what I've heard a lot more about are the guys that are at the top of teams' boards or guys that they've been watching during this process. So Now that he's going to be out there, I think he's getting a combine invite, so he will be there. He's going to be one of those guys they watch. They want to see how he moves. If he's out there and he does the change of direction stuff well, that's going to be the thing you like about him. As you see there, the mean streak, yes, he finishes blocks, something that's rare, right? A lot of guys block and they're looking around and see where the runner is after a while.
He hammers the guy,
No, he plays through the ground.
Yeah. He has that what we call that nasty disposition that you like, right?
Yeah.
So
we call him the Quentin Nelson.
Yeah.
the dirt bag.
So the question will be the movement, right? If they don't feel he moves and change direction well, he may be a guy that, yes, they play at tackle for a while, and if he doesn't pick it up, he goes inside, right? So because of size, there's a lot of guys that they feel, okay, well, we could add about 10 pounds to him, redefine him a little with the muscle and kick him inside if he's going to be a guy that struggles to redirect and change direction. So that's going to be the main thing for him. When he gets out there on those drills, if he's moving well, that'll be one of the things about it. But I don't think they'll be changing positions with him anytime soon. He'll be a tackle. I think unlike Banks is the one I'm hearing they're going to be kicking inside. He's getting
Kelvin Banks.
Yeah. So
see, we just discussed that about him playing guard.
Yeah, because of the length. And honestly, that's when you are a guy who puts out great film, but they look at your measurements and they go to the arm length isn't there and all those things, they start kicking you inside. They start making that talk. And some guys really handle it well. And like I said, unlike you look at the difference between Zach Martin and Connor Williams, two guys who were tackles in college, top-rated tackles, first-round talents at tackle, but got kicked inside at the NFL level. And it's because of plain and simple length. Okay, Zach Martin, 6'4" and change, doesn't have the desired arm length. Same thing with Connor Williams. They both kicked those guys inside, two different careers. One's going to the Hall of Fame, one's still playing and hoping that he can someday make his first Pro Bowl. So I think that's where you look at it, those two guys. And you look at what you're seeing now. Kelvin Banks seems to be fitting that mold. Guy doesn't have all the arm length issue that you desire, the arm length requirements that you desire, but he's a guy that has a tape and talent that you like, that you could probably kick him inside and make a better player out of him. So I think what you're talking about with Hunt is he's not going to see that inside move yet. They're going to be playing him a tackle. They're going to check him out when it comes to the drills as far as redirecting and all that stuff. That's going to boost his stock the most. If he goes to the combine, I don't think I think he's going to nail interviews without a problem. It's the testing. In that first 10 and 20 split on the 40, the 3-cone, the shuttle, how he changes direction, that's going to be the biggest key. And then put him out there on those drills and watch him work. If he's sliding back and forth during the mirror drills and gets up and is able to redirect during the lineman drills, I think he'll be just top 5 tackles for everybody in this class.
I'm looking. I was telling Walt my two positions, man. I'm looking for, as a Lion. I know the defensive ends is not. It's just basically who's going to be left when the Lions pick, because we need another DN, obviously. I'm looking. I don't know. I'm torn with linebacker. I think we need another pass catching tight end. You know what I'm saying? I love Sam Laporta, but I think that, a lot of teams, we see them running a lot of 2 tight end sets, and both guys can be a threat to catch the football. You know what I'm saying? I think for Jared Goff, for the running game, to help everything more run fluid and not so predictable, you know what I'm saying, on obvious passing downs, I think you do need to put another guy in there. My question is, what about Mason Taylor for LSU? This, to me, I don't know. He didn't do enough for me during the season, but I think that could be deceiving sometimes when you had a physical traits and maybe, the scheme wasn't for you, maybe the quarterback wasn't for you, and I don't know. This is a guy that could be not so much great in college, but have a good NFL career. You know what I'm saying? Did I say that? You know what I'm saying when I say that?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, would you take a chance on Mason Taylor? I'm not saying high up, but I'm thinking maybe he is a 3rd round, 4th round pick, something like that. What's your thoughts on Mason Taylor?
I like Taylor. I think he's good, but you have a plethora of talent at the tight end position, so you don't have to rush the pick, right? If he's not the highest guy on your board, you don't take him. You look around the draft board. Gunnar Helm is going to be a guy that's going to be out there that's going to
Oh
make a
yeah.
lot of sense. Arroyo is going to make sense to people. Fannin is going to make sense to people. Right? There's a lot of good tight ends in this class, so there's no need to rush it. They have big bodies, big frames. They could be the move tight end if you want the guy to go Laporta that's going to move around. Also, if you want to turn around and have somebody who's going to be that in line, you want to move Laporta around. You have all of those guys in this class. Even the kid out of Notre Dame is a guy that fits that mold. So
Yeah.
um, I think right now you just don't have to rush the position. He's a good young talent. I think that his father, the DNA from his father, kind of helps, and everybody loves NFL legacies. But
Mhm.
overall, I mean, he didn't have the greatest quarterback play, right? We talk
Yeah.
about the quarterback at LSU,
Yeah.
and so that's also a factor in it. But he runs quality routes. I think he showed a lot during Senior Bowl week, which is why he's shutting it down. He won't be playing in the game. Um, Quite a few guys doing that. If you notice the early week roster and the roster for the game, a lot smaller than it was earlier in the week, but some injuries. But he's one of those guys I think that just said, okay, I showed enough this week. I'm going to get ready for the combine. So he's pulling out. Um, but he's going to get a lot of press because of his dad, but well deserved as well. He put up a lot of good tape. Some people love him, some people don't. Um, I think overall the talent quality at tight end is there, so you don't have to rush the pick. If you want something, there's multiple guys that fit what you want.
Definitely.
Facts. Facts.
Um, Gray Zabel, North Dakota State. He's a
Mm-hmm.
guy that, I was high on about a good 3 or 4 months ago. I think North Dakota State is building a very nice reputation for themselves. He's got the height, he's got the build, a little bit of a narrow base. Arm length could be a little bit of concern for him, but very, very powerful point of attack. He meets guys. He doesn't catch rushers. That's something
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about consistently about. And we did a show on Ozzie Trapilo of Boston College a few weeks ago. And I
Yeah.
said, as powerful as he is, he catches too many rushers. I don't want to see
Yeah.
you catch rushers constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to meet guys at point of attack. Um, Gray Zabel been phenomenal, man.
Yeah, I like
He's been
him, man.
phenomenal,
Yeah.
phenomenal, and the versatility. He's a guy I think you can play him if you want to play him at left tackle, you can get away with it. You can play him at right tackle. He can play either guard position. He can play center. And this is something that has kind of irked me for the past few years. Even though I'm a slender guy, 210 pounds, I'm a trenches type of guy, man. Offensive lineman, defensive lineman. And when you look at it for what it is, it irks me that people will take an average or below average left tackle in college, and they'll boost him all the way up the draft board simply because he's a left tackle. And they will draft him over a guy that's a phenomenal offensive lineman across the board.
Yeah.
But since he's not a left tackle, well, he can't go in the top 20. He can't go in the first round. And I've always believed it was ridiculous. Um, if a guy, I felt that way about Frank Ragnow coming out. I felt that way about Ryan Kelly. Even though Ryan Kelly in with the Colts, he hasn't been great, but he's been a mainstay. He's a rock for that offensive
Yeah,
line.
it's
I
steady.
felt that
Yeah.
way about Quentin Nelson. When Quentin Nelson came out, he was the number one rated player on my board. I didn't care about the fact he was a guard. He was a guy I said
Mm-hmm.
that when you watched him play at Notre Dame, he's a guy that you want walking your mother through a dark alley, to say the least. Like Quentin was a bully. Quentin was a
Yeah.
very mean tackle. Well, he could play some tackle, but very mean guard. He could have been just as high quality tackle, but he's went through his share of injuries the past few years that kind of slowed his production and slowed the trajectory he was on. But do you find guards starting to get more respect now? Because a lot of this, you can't take a tight end in the first round. You don't take a running back in the first round. You don't take this. You don't take that. Teams seem to be adapting the mindset of, listen, if we knew Rob Gronkowski was going to become Rob Gronkowski, we would have taken him in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
If teams knew Frank Ragnow was going to become the player he became, they would have had no problem taking Frank in the top 10. Our team started to say, forget this old way of thinking. We're starting to draft the best available player, period. And also, I want to get your comments on Gray Zabel as well.
All right, so we'll start with Zabel, and I'll get to the draft portion next. All right. So Zabel is one of those guys, and we're seeing this a lot out of North Dakota State. They're producing linemen at a very high level now. Okay,
Yep.
people are starting to really notice that with that school. He's one of those guys that you love about him because he's diverse, right? He's played tackle, he's played guard, he's played center, he's done it all. He has the size, but he goes inside and plays very well. Now, the arm length is the issue that people are worried about. I think he's great inside because of his power base, because of his skill set, because of his intelligence. He's a guy that can go inside and boost your offensive line. We're seeing at that level, the NFL level, it was always the tackles, the guys, the edge protectors that have to. But now with the rise of interior defensive linemen that are very disruptive, you have to have athletic guards that are not only strong, but they're able to move, redirect, because of all the games and stunts that teams do, because of the blitzes that you see, the exotic blitzes. You have to be able to recover and slide out and pick up that blitzer that's coming from an angle that you're not expecting. There's a lot more athleticism involved in the guard position than ever before. Teams are starting to invest in that. So with Zabel, this week has shown that not only could he come out and play tackle, yes, but he can go inside and be dominant at guard. And teams love that because if you have a dominant guard that goes out there and plays, that means your quarterback is going to have a clean pocket on the inside to step up into. And hell, you're going to be able to run the football the way they want to run the football these days. Okay, everybody said the running game was dead. We found out it's not so dead this year. Okay, so guards are very important.
That's right.
As far as running game and protecting the inside of your pocket and keeping your quarterback safe. Okay, yes, edge protectors keep him safe too, but he has to have a pocket to step up into. And if your guards are constantly getting pushed back, those edge protectors are even more dangerous. So you have to go out there and protect the interior pocket. So they're starting to value guard a lot more than saying, okay, we can wait till day 2 to get a guard, day 3 to get a guard to start. Those guys are getting pushed into the backfield a lot more. They want guys that are going to hold the line at the line of scrimmage, that are not going to get penalized for jumping off sides because they're afraid of getting beat by that one tech that's hiding in the gap. You know, they want to be able to get that guy that's going to be able to combo to the second level and cut that linebacker off and pop bigger runs. They want that guy inside that's going to be able to do all that. Zabel does all that for you. As far as the draft strategy, we're starting to see teams adopt a little bit more. There's still some that are very hard-headed and say, no, we don't believe you have to do that. There are teams that are saying, we're going to do what we have to do. We saw it last year, 14 straight offensive picks. We're going to do what we have to do to get our team better. We signed a $100 million quarterback. We're still taking a quarterback at 9. All right? Teams are starting to say, we're going to do what we got to do to make our team better. If it's unconventional in the first round, it's unconventional in the first round. So there are certain teams that won't break mold, but you're seeing a lot more GMs, a lot more open thought that are saying, yeah, I got to do what I got to do to get better. I like being able to sit here and work this draft room. I don't want to be out there on the outside watching it like everybody else. So there are teams that are starting to adapt. It slowly happened over the past couple of years. Before you could predict a lot more. Oh, yeah, these guys are never going to take that guy there. Now, all of a sudden, you're seeing guys go a lot earlier than they should. Why? Because plain and simple, the value for the position is more important than the player in any position he plays.
That's right. I remember one of the best when Walt asked me to start scouting players, and the first Senior Bowl I did, I remember, man, it was Trevor. Remember Trevor Penning? I think Trevor Penning wound up getting drafted by the Saints. I think.
Yes.
He had one of the most dominant Senior Bowl weeks I ever seen. I mean, he killed everybody one-on-one.
He was getting on everybody's nerves, man.
Man, Trevor Penning, man, I think that was another process, Jeff, where this week helped him, and he got drafted. It was ironic he went to the Saints too, like Spencer Rattler did. But man, I mean, I remember that he had one of the most impressive ones I ever seen, man. You know, just a week of just one-on-ones.
Yeah,
just him just being a bruiser, and he killed everybody he went one-on-one with, man. It was crazy. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah, I like this part of the process, man, because people don't like, some people, you know, we like the combine, but people will say, oh, well, how can you know anything about a player running around with shorts on with no pads? And, you know, I just think the individual workouts tell you a lot. Like Another guy who I was thinking about that hasn't really panned out yet was Trenton Simpson. He was another guy that had a lot of. I think he played for the Ravens. I think he plays at linebacker. It's
A lot of
fast.
tools.
You have a lot of tools, but it just seemed like it hasn't translated yet on. I think this year he had a little bit better season than he did, at first when he first came out. So sometimes it does matter. Coaching matters. I think more so than it. I think that people just don't. Obviously, you say talent wins, and it does. But I do think, man, it's a lot to be said about what team and the coaches, because I think philosophies are different, or just flat out the organization sucks at that particular time, man. That's why it's important. I think Chicago had to change coaches. They got to get the right people, because they can't fumble Caleb Williams, and he's just the one guy I can think of on top of my head that you can't fumble that guy, man. You can't.
It'll be
what I'm saying? So it's
It'll
important.
be the third straight quarterback if they mess that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they already working on 3 straight quarterbacks. What? 2 offensive coordinators and 2 head coaches in their first 2 years. All 3 of them.
Yeah.
Trubisky, Justin, and you can't fumble him. This guy was supposed to be a generational talent.
Yeah.
You can't fumble him and get him hurt.
That'll be a third straight quarterback they take with a lame duck head coach. So they've messed it up 3 times already with the same equation. All right. Mm-hmm. So they have to get this right. Trenton Simpson, the hard part is the linebacker position, right?
Yep.
How do you evaluate it now? It was real easy 10, 15 years ago when it was a little less spread. You saw 4-3 defenses, 3-4 defenses, right? Now you're seeing a lot more nickel and dime defenses, right? You're seeing 3-3 stacks. You're seeing 4-2-5s, and so less linebackers on the field, more safeties and corners, right? So you have to get the linebacker evaluation right, and it's hard to do because some of those safeties are really linebackers. Some of those linebackers are really safeties.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're talking about the NFL level, now that you mimic the college level, you're playing a lot more nickel defense on the field, sub packages, 2 linebackers in most cases, sometimes 3. But most of the time it's 2 linebackers and a safety, or 2 linebackers and a nickel back. The hard part of that evaluation is, before we always knew what the Mike linebacker was, we always knew what the Sam backer was, we always knew what the Will is. The hard part of that is now you can't hide that Will anymore. The Will was always your chase guy, right? He was always the guy in your 4-3. The Mike was a big body that handled in the middle. The Sam was a big body that handled point of attack runs. And your Will was your cleanup guy. He roved sideline to sideline. You can't hide that guy anymore in the nickel fronts, right? Because everything's spread out. Now linemen can get second level. Will linebackers typically were not that physical guy. They were the chaser. They were operated in clean space. They can't do that anymore. Okay, so you're relying on now both linebackers to be physical players that could also rove sideline to sideline, and they have to be instinctive players as well because there's less of them on the field. There's no force-filled spill. There's only a force fill, right? So those guys have to be a little more physical than what we've seen. If you're a will-type player, and that's one of the problems with Simpson was he was a will-type player. He's a guy that he's operated in clean space the most. It's hard for that guy to be as effective when he's now got to fight off blocks, do all the things that he wasn't great at the college level. So while he can blitz and do certain things, as far as a run fits, that's not exactly his greatest strength, is fighting off a tackle and forcing the action back inside. He tends to get engulfed a little and gets pushed off the ball, and that's where it struggles for him. I think and there's a lot of guys like that. It's just, unfortunately, the change in the schemes have put a lot of stress on linebackers at this level. So guys that aren't used to fighting off those big boys are struggling. And it's one of the biggest struggles when evaluating a position, because you'll see a guy that's dominant at the college level because somehow he's playing clean, but when he gets to the NFL level, he can't do it. It's a physicality mindset, and you have to be even better of a reader than you were at the college level. Because, like I said, there's not 3 guys out there. There's no spill guy. Your spill guy is either a safety or a corner now, right? And those guys aren't exactly great at run fits because they're not used to it.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think Isaiah Simmons was another perfect example of
Yeah. Yep.
everybody who's a phenomenal athlete isn't a good football player. No, I'm not gonna hold on. Let me not say Isaiah Simmons wasn't a good football player. He won the
Yeah,
what was it? Not the Thorpe Award. That's the defensive back. He won what was it the linebacker of the year award his last year at Clemson.
yeah,
So yeah, he operated in a lot of clean space. You go back, you look at some of his major plays he made at Clemson. It's him running off the edge unblocked. It's him
yeah.
playing
See,
with his it's him playing facing the football as well, because as
yeah,
athletic as Isaiah was, you put him in space and ask him to turn left, north, and south, I mean east and west, and cover people, he like a fish out of water. So it was
yeah,
strange evaluating him, but I was a guy that looked at him like, okay, you know what? I see the tools, I see the athleticism. For him to win the linebacker of the year award in college football, there has to be something there. And Arizona
yeah,
gave up on him after what, 2 years, two and a
yeah.
half seasons.
They didn't know how to
Then
use
he
him.
got traded to the Giants, and now I don't know
Yeah.
what's going. I think his career is kind of up in
Buckets
limbo now.
Award. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, the Buckets Award.
Yeah.
yeah. The problem with Isaiah was just that, right? He was playing a special position. He was playing that rover position, right? So he played a lot more like a linebacker. He did have some safety coverage there. I thought he was a better box strong safety than he was a linebacker. He wanted to be a will. And I think what happened was he tried to be a will. They realized they couldn't hide him. Teams ran at him, right? So then they said, okay, well, we'll try and make you a rover. But the problem is you can't really do that because you have Buda Baker over there, who's a rover. So now he's kind of flexed into a strong safety type, nickel type role, which he really wasn't fit for. So Arizona wasn't a good fit. Then he goes to the Giants, which really didn't have the talent for him. So he's trying to fit in anywhere he could with the Giants. That didn't work out. So now he's an older player. He's past his prime. Okay, he's not going to get any better or faster, right? He's just going to be the player he is now.
Mhm.
So his prime was wasted on two teams that really couldn't use him. He was better off probably as a box safety who could come down and do a lot of the things. He doesn't have to play a lot of over-the-top coverage. He can drop into shorter zones. He can cover guys, man, as far as tight ends, man. He was capable of doing that. Don't put him against the slot. Put him against the tight end, okay? Now, eventually somebody's going to recognize that you got to match up with him. But if he's playing against running backs and tight ends, there's a better chance. So that's why they kept trying to hide him at linebacker. But if you're playing a sub package where you only have two linebackers on the field, he's the best guy to walk up as that box safety, right? The problem is if you're going to try to play him too high, that's where his weakness is. He's very similar to a Roy Williams kind of player.
Oh yeah, Roy was he
Yeah.
was a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
his brand of safety was already on his way out.
Yeah,
to
it was,
the-
it was
the league,
obsolete,
boy.
man. It was obsolete
Yeah.
quick
Yeah.
with Roy Williams, man. Yeah.
So what are your biggest Senior Bowl risers and fallers? I know we mentioned one of them. Gray Zabel of North Dakota State made himself a lot of money, I think, this week. Regardless of position, who are some of your biggest risers and fallers from this week so far in practice?
So you mentioned Gray Zabel was one of the guys. Listen, trying to find the other name I had highlighted. Give me 1 second. So we talked about Zabel. We talked about Vincent. Those are two of my biggest risers. I think the offensive linemen showed out big. We didn't have those big flashy performances from receivers this year. So I don't think you made a lot of money if you're a receiver this week. You're going to need today to do that. Stout, yesterday mentioning him, Upton Stout had a good week. The guy that made the most money, though, out of the DB room was Hairston. Hairston had a great week. He's not playing today. He already said, all right, I'm packing up, going to the combine. All right. So a lot of the guys that felt they had a great week already checked out of Mobile. They're already gone. All right. So, but yes, Stout who played very well. The other corner, McWilliams from UCF, showed some great tape. He's definitely going to be a guy teams look at as a nickel. I like Brandon Adams. I didn't see a lot of flash. He had a big flashy play the first day, been quieter ever since. But I like Brandon Adams. I think, the big corners are what people love. There's still some questions about him in man coverage. But overall, I think he's a guy that he didn't make a lot of money this week, but keep an eye on him. Jack Kaiser, Notre Dame, the guy that made a lot of money. Everybody knew, yes, Jack Kaiser. They knew the name. They knew with Notre Dame, but he showed a lot
Yeah.
more this week that showed that, yes, it wasn't just the scheme at Notre Dame. It wasn't just those linemen up front. I could actually read holes, get there, make tackles, drop into coverage, and make plays as well. So those are some of the things. Some guys that I was kind of disappointed with was R.J. Open from Notre Dame. I know he's coming off the injury, but not seeing the power that I thought I would see from him. We saw at Notre Dame there was times against the run he was hard to block. There's times at Notre Dame where he was able to push linemen back into the quarterback. None of that this week. It was all, if he didn't win with speed, he didn't win at all. LaQuint Allen from Syracuse had some good moments. Damian Martinez had some good moments. I like Damian Martinez coming into this process, so he didn't need a big week for me. I think he's a good day 3 running back that's going to contribute somewhere. Donovan Edwards, Michigan, another guy who didn't have a great week, but already had his money made coming in. You know where he's going to fall in the draft. Ollie Gordon had some really good moments in practice. People love his size. I think that's one of the guys that made a little money this week. Love to see more out of R.J. Harvey, but I've seen enough out of him during the regular season. I think he's going to be where he's going to be. Emory Jones had a good week.
LSU, he's intriguing.
So I think he's another guy that a lot of people have him top 50. He's probably going to rise a little bit more. So, Walter Nolan before the injury, I think, was having a good week.
Looks like one of the more natural 3 techs.
Yeah. Deion Walker. Now, here's a guy that we got a really good evaluation of this week, right? The rare body type. You don't get too many 6'7" D tackles, and there's a good reason why, right? We talk about that on the offensive line. We talk about certain guys outgrowing a position. You guys with the Lions had Dan Skipper. Dan Skipper was a guy I liked coming out of Arkansas. I saw the athleticism. He played all over the line, but the problem with Dan Skipper was he was 6'9.5". Okay, so it's kind of hard to get low when you're that big, right? So now you flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. He's 6'7", and you're always trying to play low, but now you have natural linemen that are automatically lowering you. So he's always playing with a high power base. Right, so that's why it's a rare body. You never really see a lot of 6'7" D tackles.
The little kid, I called him a little kid. He's a grown man now. The guy from the center from Jacksonville State, man.
Yeah,
he consistently got under Deion's pads, and it was hilarious, man.
It's not hard for him. He's naturally there. He is naturally there. So it is hard. For a guy that's 6'7" to play that low. It is hard for an offensive tackle to stop somebody who's 6'2" from always getting into their chest. They're always down there. It's hard to bend that low for those guys. So we saw the challenges of his natural size. Can he play? Yes. He has a hell of a power base on him. He could drive a lot of people back, but he's also going to be a guy that's going to get washed at times. He's also a guy in pass rush on the inside who's going to have a hard time breaking an anchor down because he's so high. Pad level is always going to be a concern for him. It is a natural thing for him, unfortunately. He's got to have to find ways around it, whether it's more hands and trying to fight hands off and trying to break down their anchor that way. But it's unfortunately for him, it's a natural thing. He's going to fall just because of his size, not so much because of his ability.
How about Darius Alexander of Toledo? I think he's the guy you compare him and Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart, I think, has some issues with just always wanting to go right down the middle of everybody. You look at Alexander, you look at some of his film from Toledo. I was impressed with the finesse, the handwork, the lateral agility from Darius Alexander. How has he looked at practice this week?
He's been solid. He's had some good moments. The problem is when he doesn't win with those moves, the power isn't there. Okay, gotcha. So he has issues at time when he does have to rush people down the middle. He doesn't get consistent push. All right, so while the opposite, the guy that does always pushes, doesn't have the repertoire that he has. Right, so it's kind of a guy who's read the whole book, and the guy that's read the whole first chapter on pass rush. The guy that read the first chapter on pass rush is just going to win with that one trick that he knows. The guy that read the whole book has more to beat you with. but he doesn't have that one tool that this guy who read the one chapter has, right? So that's the one thing about it is when you watch these two guys, one guy is a heck of a pass rush repertoire. He knows how to dip and rip. He knows how to push, pull. He knows how to fight his way off of blocks faster using those hands, get those offensive linemen's hands down. The other guy is just straight blunt force trauma. I'm going to pick a side, I'm going to pick a shoulder and rush you down that way and push you into the pocket. And he doesn't have all of the other stuff. He doesn't know how to the dip and rip. He doesn't know how to club. He doesn't know how to spin back. It's just straight blunt force trauma. I'm going to beat you with what I have, and that's that 1 year of power.
And neither are good to just take strictly to an offensive, not a high quality offensive tackle in the NFL. Like you can't be just a bull rusher all the time. You can't be strictly a finesse technician all the time. You got to find a way to combine both of them. And I think a lot of guys do kind of struggle with that.
And when you have that, it's something you have to learn. So those are guys that you draft off of traits, right? Those are guys you look at and say, they have traits we like. We can work with them. We can build them up. If you don't believe they're more than what they are, then those are just rotational bodies in your pass rush that are coming off your bench. So I think that's the one thing that you're looking at with these guys is, can they be more than what you're seeing? I think when you look at Alexander, he can be. He does have the ability to generate power. He relies on the different moves. So he's a guy that, yes, you're going to play probably as more of a 3-tech than a 1, and you're going to allow him to utilize those moves as he's rushing with a wider rush. But what you want to do also is utilize him on games. Okay, so when you're cross stunting and you're having that end crash down to him loop around, he's a guy that knows how to beat a tackle because he has that pass rush repertoire. True. As opposed to the opposite, where he's a power rusher. So he's a guy that's always going to lead that stunt. Okay, the guy that's always going to crash, if you're going to play him as that 1-tech or the 3-tech, he's always going to crash the gap and allow the guy to loop inside of him because he's more the power guy. I'm going to power my way, blunt force trauma my way through the pass rusher. So he's a guy you're going to have to teach certain moves to and refine them, but you're going to also have to use them properly on games.
Yeah, a couple of, I'm glad you put Mike Green up for Brent because he did ask. Now, Mike Green, I just want to put my input on him. Now, a little bit familiar with him. He was kind of like a Marshawn Nealon, like unknown last year from Western. Remember, Marshawn Nealon kind of came on the scene during this time.
Yeah,
Mike Green is this year's Marshawn Nealon. I even seen a mock draft that had Mike Green from anywhere from 28 to the Lions. But then yesterday, I forget it was might have been Sporting News. I can't remember which outlet, but they had Mike Green a top 10 pick, man. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if he goes that high.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely a day 2 guy. Because you're still seeing a lot of development pass rush wise from him. He has the edge speed. The edge speed is there. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, but once again, we've seen a lot of times guys that may have the edge speed don't always win in the NFL. Those guys at the tackle level at the NFL are pretty good at protecting the edge. It takes a very special rusher to consistently beat them. All right. So he may win 1 out of 9 times the way he is right now. You want to boost that up the way he's winning 4 out of 9 times, 5 out of 9 times, not 1, 2 out of 9. So how you do that is you have to clean up his rush ability. So you have to teach him how to rush where he has a 2-way go. You have to teach him where he's pushing the edge to get that lineman off balance, where he can come back inside, whether it's with a dip and rip or even spin back, right? We've seen some of the guys who were masters at that, who flew off the ball, the Freeneys, the Robert Mathises, who flew off the ball, got tackles off in their kick step too early and off balance, and were able to spin back inside or just cut back inside, up and under. So you're seeing from him the speed to win off the edge. In the one-on-ones, he looks great. In the team drills, he had some great moments, but then he also had moments where he was able to get pushed past the quarterback, and the quarterback was able to step up and throw. That's a loss, right? Yeah, it looks like you won when you're able to get pushed past, but it's a loss because once he gets past that quarterback is an escape. Yeah. Right? So you have to be able to work to the top of the edge and then work your way down to the quarterback where you can finish at the quarterback. If you're not finishing at the quarterback, you're just as big a liability as you are if you're not getting it.
Man, this is great. I pick your brain. I got one more guy, man. I got one more guy. I think he's a maniac. What's the kid from Arkansas? Is Landon Jackson? Am I saying it
Yeah.
right? Landon.
Yeah.
I think Landon Jackson, man. That I'm kind of root for that. I hope the Lions take that kid, man. You know what I'm saying? I just think he's got a little bit of some craziness to him, a little bit that needs to be unlocked. But he could be a guy if Mike Green's not there, or name said guy. I'd like the Nick Skirton guy from
Oh yeah, I like
Texas
Nick.
A&M. I like Nick
Yeah.
too, man. So I think, man, it's we got some Dallas Turner types out there, you know what I'm saying, that kind of fit the same build he was, when he was out coming out. So I don't know. Just Landon Jackson just seems like a wild card to me. You know what I'm saying? It just he could be anywhere from a second round pick, or somebody gonna take a chance on him late first round, or is he gonna be third round? It's just interesting to see what team is going to pull the trigger on one of these, high energy, you may have to coach them up tight, like you just mentioned, eloquent with Mike Green. It's just, I feel Landon Jackson, a guy that needs to be looked at,
Yeah, and you had a guy named John Comiskey who you drafted and you liked, right? I think he's a better version of Comiskey. I think he's a bigger version,
Yeah.
a little faster,
Yeah.
and he has a little more length than Comiskey. So if you want to move on from Comiskey and you have the ability to get Jackson in the draft, you take it because it's a younger version with more upside than what you had. Okay, so you guys always are saying that you want to boost your pass rush. That's one of the guys you do it with.
Man.
And you don't have to use a totally high pick to get him. He's going to be around day 2. So unless there's this intense run on pass rushers, he's going to be around day 2.
Yeah, love that kid, man. I think he'd be a maniac. He'd be great for us, man. That's so.
Yeah. Want to finish things up real quick. Don't want to keep you too much longer. Appreciate all the knowledge you've been giving us today.
Jeff. Unbelievable.
I just want to do a quick Lions overview. So, what do you consider our biggest concerns and draft needs? It's always important to get an outsider's viewpoint of what your team is and what they believe your team isn't.
Well, you have a special pass rusher. You want more to go with them. I think you have a lot of guys on the market. Davenport's one of those guys. Comiskey is one of those guys. And then you have some interior guys, Jonah Williams. So I think the defensive front is where you want to attack. You can get more depth on the defensive tackle. I think your starters are okay. But it's the edge. You want 4 to be able to rush with 4. So eventually when you get your stud pass rusher back, you want to have guys opposite him and guys that spell him that don't diminish what you're getting off the edge. So I think what you need to do is go out there. We talked about the Landon Jacksons. You'll get a couple of these guys to come in this draft to help on your edge. I think you'll be fine because what we've seen from your interior run defenders is they're great at holding up at the line of scrimmage and slowing down teams' running game. You may get a little pass rush out of them on the inside as well. So I think interior, you guys are okay. You could probably resign some of the guys you had, but I think you'll be bringing in more bodies, younger bodies to rotate into that defensive line room on the interior. But you got to get some guys on the outside that consistently rush the passer, bring more speed, bring a little more power than what you had. And I think that's where you're going to win with. So you don't have to overexpose your defense by blitzing. That's what you want to do. If you can get there with 4, okay, how do you beat Pat Mahomes? You get there with 4, right? You play all that coverage and make them hold the ball. So that's what you have to do. There's a lot of pass rushers in this draft. Not a lot at the top of the board, but there's a lot in the middle. You have guys like that. Those are guys that you can bring 2 or 3 in, and they're going to bring enough to your room to help boost your pass rush. They don't have to come out there and play 50 downs. They only have to play 20, 30 downs to help your defense.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on Terrion Arnold and the rookie season he had, and what were your thoughts on him coming out? Because me, myself, being honest, I had Quinyon Mitchell rated as my number 1 corner coming out last year.
He was mine as well, yeah.
I had Wiggins, even though I'm a traits guy when it comes to the corner. I'm a traits guy when it comes to the cornerback position, man. And, Wiggins looks like a potential athletic shutdown corner for the Ravens. Mitchell had a tremendous season for the Philadelphia Eagles. Another guy, the kid from Iowa who turned out
Mhm.
to they made him a
Cooper
nickel.
DeJean.
Yeah,
The
Cooper.
Cooper
Cooper
DeJean,
turned out
yeah.
to be
Hmm.
they made him a good football player. They put him in position to be a good football player.
And
What were
he's
your thoughts
eventually
on
Slade's
Terrion?
replacement. Yeah.
Definitely. What were your thoughts on Terrion Arnold from a year ago and translating to what you saw from him year one with us?
He had a solid rookie year. It wasn't great, right? It wasn't great, but it was solid. But the things that we saw from him, the things we knew we were going to get. He knew he was a big grabby, so he got you the penalties for being a big grabby. As he gets more entrenched at the NFL game, you'll see that go away.
Yeah.
Because he'll understand how to play man without grabbing all the time. At the college level, that's the hardest part. These guys get away with a lot of grabbing. You're seeing it at the Senior Bowl. Every one-on-one is a flag. Why? Because they're so used to grabbing past 5 yards. The NFL, you can't do that.
Right.
Okay, so I think what you're going to see is once he gets used to being at the NFL level, he's gotten a little used to NFL talent, as you saw him not give up so many big plays after a while, but
Yeah.
the grabbiness is still there. He's going to have to learn to deal with that. Some guys never learn to deal with it. Unfortunately, he's a guy I think that has the ability to do that. He can transition away from it as he understands how to play better technique as far as staying in phase. Because usually the grabbing happens when you get out of phase and you start to panic, right? You start to separate. Let me get him back. Get over here, right? So it's more about staying in phase. I think he'll get better at that as he continues on. But he had a solid rookie year. I don't think he was bad. He wasn't targeted to the point where you had to pull him off the field, right? He was a guy that you had to keep on the field because you needed him, and he didn't hurt you that way. The last game of the season, the playoff game, there was nobody that covered great that day. To be honest with you, everybody gave up something. So yeah, it's one of those things where you don't want him getting caught out of position. He's not going to have the career with you guys like Tease Tabor had, but he's going to have a way better career than that. Yeah. He's going to have a way better. He's going to have a way better career than that. I think
Jeff.
as he gets along, as he goes along, he's going to be. Guys start to become veterans as they go along, and he's going to understand how to play at this level. What's going to work for him, what's not going to work for him. He may never be that lockdown corner, but he could be that solid contributor on the opposite side that gives you what you need to get through games and win football games. As long as he's not going out there and giving up massive plays every game, I think he'll be all right.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for reiterating what I see. And Terry, I'll be getting cooked, man. Because I'm with Terry on, I'll be getting cooked.
It's hard to defend, but
it's hard
with rookie corners, there's some that have to listen. Quinyon Mitchell's year was very easy in that defense. Had he gotten there a year earlier, he would have had some moments too. But Quinyon Mitchell's a very good player. But it always helps when you have a very steady corner opposite side with Darius Slay.
Yeah.
Right? And it also helps to have those guys in the slot. Had he had Avonte Maddox in the slot, they'd be trying to do a lot more. But he had Cooper DeJean in the slot. That's a heck of a guy. This was a first-round corner, too, remember?
Yeah.
DeJean was supposed to go in the first round. Right? So Terrion Arnold, like I said, he went where he was supposed to go. He did go, right? But you're seeing it. The college players are allowed to grab a lot more than the NFL players. And it doesn't go away in a training camp sometimes. It takes about a year or two to get past all of that. He had a rough year with it, his rookie year. I think he'll start to get past it as he starts to get a little more entrenched in the pro game.
Yeah. I thought more than anything with him, I saw at Alabama were kind of like physical limitations. That's why I kind of figured he would be better suited in the slot than on the perimeter. Those LSU athletes gave him problems. Like athletes give him problems. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Kyron Lacey, they gave him problems. Kool-Aid McKinstry, a little bit better of an athlete than him. So he was a better suited at 6 foot 190, a little bit bigger than Terrion to kind of hold his own with those types of guys a little bit more. My concern with him was that, and for people who say athleticism or speed doesn't matter at corner, look at the all-time greats. They were all phenomenal athletes. Even though Darrell Green wasn't tall, he wasn't the biggest guy. He was a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
Woodson, Champ Bailey, even the taller guys back in the day from the 70s, 80s, they were still big, athletic, tall guys and with traits. And that was the issue I had with him. That, going to the NFL, you're asking him to be a boundary corner. 1 week, you're telling him to then AG like to play a lot of man. He wants to play man, but considering the injuries that happened in the secondary, this and that, Carlton Davis going out for the season with a broken jaw, he had to start playing more zone. You can't be out there with a lack of athleticism. Now,
Yeah,
do you have to be the greatest athlete ever? No. Would I like you to be? Sure. But you have to have some form. Your athleticism is your defense to someone
Yeah,
else's athleticism.
yeah, that's
And you
true.
go out there one Sunday, you got to deal with DK Metcalf. You go out there next Sunday, you got to deal with Jamar Chase. You go out there next Sunday, you got to chase Tyreek Hill around. You need some athleticism. I don't care, and I think it goes hand in hand with what you mentioned as far as being an edge rusher. Do I want you to be strictly an athlete at corner? No. They can't process, read, or react. No, I don't want you to be that. I want you to have like the perfect blend of both. Because as a corner, you can't be just the technician and be smart, but you got this guy on offense who's 6'3" and runs a 4.3, and he's smart too.
hmm
He knows how to set you up through 3 or 4 different ways. So I just felt that he was ultimately going to be better suited for the slot. I would trust him better in the slot over putting him out there on the island against the best athletes in the world consistently. That was my biggest issue with him. But Lions fans here destroyed me uh, right after the draft because I didn't say Terrion Arnold's the best. Like I'm a guy that I'm gonna stick to my guns. If I like you, I like you. If I'm wrong about you, I'll admit I'm wrong about you. Cooper DeJean, I was wrong about him, but he was also put in a good situation there in Philadelphia where he can be a good player.
yeah, and this is why I talk about being in learning to be a better pro. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here. Right, learning to be a better pro. Being an athlete is a major part of it, but you got to understand what you're seeing, how to apply. You have to have a game plan as a corner. Okay, one of the things when I was a corner, I wasn't the greatest athlete. I had better athletes that I matched up with, but how you did it was you watched the film, you came up with a game plan, and you had a backup plan if that game plan didn't work. But you had to say, my strengths are blah, blah, blah. His strengths are this. My weaknesses are this. They're going to try and attack it. How do I game plan to take that away? And if you do that, even if you have the athleticism that Terrion Arnold has, you still have to go out there and say, okay, what am I matching up with this week? What's the game plan we're doing? How do I fix that? Okay. How do I go out there and make this where he's not going out there having a 100-yard game and 2 and 3 touchdowns? How do I slow down on A.J. Brown? Well, A.J. Brown loves to go vertical. As long as I'm in phase and I'm backing him to the sideline, he's not going to beat me over the top. As long as I'm in phase and he's able to come down and I'm able to break with him, when he breaks, he's not going to get big plays on me on the inside. I can break up passes. As long as I'm reading my keys right when they're throwing those little hitches and screens underneath, as soon as that ball is there, if I'm not breaking it up, I'm making a tackle. There is no yards after the catch. That's where Terrion Arnold has to get better. And that's something he will get better if he's learning to be the pro. I think he's going to be. I think he'll be fine with that. He was able to adjust at Alabama. Harder part about Bama is when you're playing against LSU and those elite receivers that they were playing with, there's a lot of space when the guy on the opposite side ain't as good. Right. And I think that's one of the things that happens is you get put into situations where he ain't as good. I got to be the better guy. And guess what? Sometimes that guy across from me is better than me. So I think that's where you look at it and say, he's got to be better at that. He's got to be a better pro. He's got to come up with better game plans for what he's doing week after week. He will learn that. I think that will be the one thing about it that gets better. As far as Antoine Powell-Ryland, great showing at the Shrine. I think what Antoine Powell-Ryland is the lack of size that people look at, which is why he ended up at the Shrine and not the Senior Bowl, although a lot of people said he should have been at the Senior Bowl. I think overall he's a very good pass rusher, a speed rusher, has a lot of moves, great repertoire, little light on the speed to power ratio, but I think he can get better at that because he's so low to the ground and generates a good amount of force. I think he can get better at that. But he's won so much with speed, he hasn't had to use it, so we haven't fully evaluated that portion of him. I think overall in this process, people value him. That week he put out there in Dallas was a good week. I think overall, he can only do better when he meets with teams, goes out there and works out at the combine at his pro day. his stock will only climb in teams' eyes.
Great stuff, Jeff. Man, want to go ahead and wrap this up.
Yes, Jeff.
We done
Yes.
kidnapped you for an hour and 24 minutes, man. We
I'm
done.
used to
Yeah,
it. It's that time of year.
yeah, man.
Definitely. Just one more question before we get out of here. You
Go
can get
for it.
straight to it. You ain't got to go too deep into it. Who's the best quarterback in this draft? And if you were the GM of a quarterback needy team, who would you take?
I know everybody is infatuated with Jackson Dart after the week he had. He did himself a good service this week. I'm still saying the number one quarterback on my board right now is Cam Ward. The reason being the stuff he was able to do. We talk about him and Shador. The difference between him and Shador Sanders, Shador had to play hero ball, made a lot of mistakes. Cam Ward did. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason why Miami was able to come back in a lot of games because of Cam Ward. Okay. I watched them in person here in South Florida when they played USF. They got punched in the mouth early. Cam Ward brought them back. Okay. So, and that was a lot of games that they should have lost. The South Carolina game, et cetera, et cetera. You can go through the whole list of their wins this season that were too close for comfort. Cam Ward was always the steadying force in all of those games. So he's a guy that's battle proven. He's had the weight of his shoulders, the weight of the world on his shoulders already. He's a guy that showed you he can produce no matter what. Yes, he has some issues with injuries in his past. I think that's a guy that you can trust if you need to go into your quarterback room and say, hey, young man, you're going to be the future of our franchise. I like Shador. I think he can be a future franchise quarterback. I still think he needs some development as far as decision-making, a lot of intentional grounding calls, a lot of extra hits, a lot of extra running around he didn't have to do to put himself and his team in a lot of crazy situations. Granted, there wasn't, as much as we see a lot of these guys in all-star games, they weren't exactly the greatest at getting open. They weren't the greatest at protecting them either at times. I think the best player other than him on that Colorado team is, of course, Travis Hunter. So I think when you look at Shador is a close second, but he's second compared to Cam Ward.
Good stuff. Right. Good stuff. Ashanti, anything you want to throw out there before we get out of here?
No, man. We're going to continue with our offensive line breakdown with Tuesday. So to whatever day, you want to do, that's fine. Yeah, Jeff, amazing, man. Thank you for coming on, man. I love having, a guy as, or astute as yourself, in the NFL, realm, man. I just I love your input. I think our listeners love it. Jeff, we know you know what the heck you're talking about, man. And it's refreshing to get someone who knows what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times I was watching the Pivot podcast, and it was funny last night, Channing Crowder was talking about how Mel Kiper pretty much ruined his money-making ability when he came out, because Mel Kiper was saying this, that about him. You know what I'm saying? And because he may have had an agenda against him, who knows? But, it's just real refreshing, Jeff. You know what the hell you talk about, man. Much respect, much love to you, man. And then hopefully you come back on maybe around the combine or something. We can pick your brain some more. So
absolutely. Well, I had good teachers, just like Walt. SMWW. We had Mark Dominic, John Wooten, Russ Land taught me a lot. I have my scouting mentor is a friend of mine.
Russ hilarious, man.
Yeah, Russ is a good
Russ hilarious,
man. Dude. Jerry Hardaway, who was former scout of the year, is my mentor. He's with the Cardinals and Panthers, 20 plus years in the NFL. So that's 90 plus years of scouting experience that I got to learn from. So, I can't complain about my teachers. They taught me a lot. So functional football knowledge combined with that tutelage, how can you go wrong?
Facts.
Definitely. All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us this Saturday morning. We will be back with more offensive line talk in the next few days. One Pride.